Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Infinite Abilities Podcast. I am your host, Nick Yerhart, and we are here to encourage each other to find our own unique abilities. Let's go. All right, everyone. So today we have Noah Healy, and he's on a mission to change, the world, kind of. So I'm excited for him to share about what he's working on and what he's doing because it's going to change everything for the good. So, Noah, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, my name is Noah Healy, born and raised in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm a recreational mathematician, and for around a decade at this point, I've been working on a patent for a system that would upgrade our financial markets, particularly commodities, by thousands of times, and that would make our economy significantly more efficient than it ever has been.
And, that would be incredible because right now our economy is not that great. So if we can improve that with what you're doing, that would be awesome.
I quite agree. Yeah, there's been a sort of divergence in what productivity does for the common man since the 70s, and so we've seen increasing rates of income disparity, but we've also seen a decline in total productivity gain because we're just using up more and more of our time and effort doing something that we used to be able to do cheaper and easier before we had modern communication technology.
Yep, exactly. So can you explain to the listeners kind of exactly what you're working on?
Sure. Well, so let's start with commodities. Commodities are products of uniform quality. So, when you go to the grocery store, when you get canned goods or, bags of flour or something like that, you don't necessarily have to carefully investigate that entire product. We kind of assume that products of a given type are the same over and over again, and that greatly simplifies your experience of buying things. Well, the same thing works for large producers and consumers. If you're running a factory that needs steel rod stock or something on a regular basis, you don't really want to have to go examine every single inch of every single rod and make sure that it's the same chemical composition and everything else. It would be way too expensive. So we've come up with several dozen standard things that range from things like steel and copper to things like wheat and corn and sort of everywhere in between. And we have these markets that the stock market was actually patterned after that we use to trade those things. And that system has been in use in various countries and sort of around the world for about 800 years. And I've come up with a new mechanism that would allow people operating markets to greatly reduce the overhead cost for those producers and consumers while greatly reducing their overhead costs and actually allow them to essentially decide how to allocate the costs and rewards kind of on a role basis. So they could decide what sort of rates of return they wanted to exist in their marketplace, what sort of cost overheads they wanted to exist in their marketplace, and so on, and also what sort of profit margin they'd like to exist in their marketplace. And while there are limits, you can't plug in any numbers you want because this system is thousands of times more efficient than the systems that presently exist. You can multiply or divide each of those numbers by 10 if you want to, as a kind of simple off-the-shelf answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around it, but I think I'm thinking too small, and I know that I don't know enough about this space. So, Is there something that you can compare it to?
Well, I can trot out some numbers for sort of a basic example.
Okay.
So let's walk through sort of a handful of these roles, and let's start with the people that are going to get the front end benefits. The consumers are going to get a long term benefit, but up front, the forecaster speculator types get a benefit, the producers get a benefit, and the operator gets a benefit. So the sort of average figures for an American wheat farm are something like a 14% profit margin. If the costs that they pay for accessing the markets were to drop by around 90%, that number would probably go up to around 21%,
Okay, so
or
from
or more.
14 to 21.
Yeah. And
That's a big
so,
improvement.
yeah. So to put this in context, if you had a family farm that was doing around 500,000 in total crop yield, you would be looking at about $70,000 in income for that farm. And so that would be median-ish behavior. This would add another $35,000 to your income, and you would now be an entirely new tax bracket, uh,
Yep.
or do something else, be able to invest more in the farm for greater productivity, or so on. Moving on, the people that invest and speculate in commodity markets get rates of return that are pretty similar to the rates of return that people get for successful investing in stock and bond markets, because they're all highly liquid. And if people are making a lot of money investing in the corn market, the people that invest in stocks and bonds will start putting some more cash into those corn markets and drive those returns down. And so you can, again, kind of roughly figure that those returns are probably on the order of, say, 15% a year.
Hmm.
And so if you've got, $100 million under contract that you're investing for people, then you're looking at $15 million a year on that hedge fund. With this system, it could be 150% a year. And so to get that 15 million, you might only need $10 million under contract, which means that that hedge fund manager could actually tell all their clients to go home, and they could just make all that money themselves with their own money, and not have to split it with clients whose money it actually is. Uh,
Hmm.
And then we get to the operator, the primary operator of commodity markets in the United States of America, and one of the most important marketplaces on earth, is the CME Group, operating out of Chicago. Their revenues are a little under $1 billion a year, and the costs associated with trading commodities that this is talking about reducing uh, are on the order of $1 trillion a year. So they're getting about $4 billion a year. They're not an especially, hugely profitable company. So, they're spending like 3.5 to $3.75 billion a year to be able to retain those revenues.
Hmm.
A large piece of that is operating costs like bandwidth, computer networking, the sorts of people who are experts at microsecond extremely high bandwidth computer networking, who are not cheap. It's a highly
Hmm.
specialized skill, and so on. With this system, they could decide to have a revenue of $40 billion instead of $4 billion, and operating costs of more like $30 million than $300 million. And
Hmm.
so instead of operating at probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a, 10 to 30% profit margin, they would suddenly be operating well above 99% profit margins. So
That's
and
huge.
all of those things can happen at the same time, or different mixes of those numbers that are more or less attractive to various parties at the discretion of whoever actually gets to roll this out.
Yep. Wow, so this is really gonna change everything, and it's gonna be a game changer. And it's not only helping the consumer, but also the distributor, the person who's selling these things, which is just going to significantly help everything.
Well, yeah. So one of the things to sort of bear in mind about $1 trillion is that uh, our economy's growth rate is roughly that size at this point. And service costs are what's known as a deadweight loss. So when you spend money to sort of stay in the same place, that isn't really helping your economy out. And so if you cannot spend money in the same place, the money you save can now go to getting you to a better place. And so if all of a sudden numbers in the neighborhood of the size of the growth rate of our economy become available to do something else, our economy's growth rate goes up 50 to 100%. And the result of living in a country with an economy with a faster growth rate, particularly one that no longer has this siphoning mechanism that current markets have turned into, is the actual sort of rising tide that really does raise all the boats, because that's raising the boats is where the money comes from in this scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I don't want to get political or anything, but what do you think Elon Musk would think about your system? I know that he wants to clean up everything and help the economy. What would, what do you think he would think about it? Nobody is. Yeah.
Strongly encourage him to look into the technology if he would like to have an annual income that looks like his current net worth. Because, like I said, 40 billion is if you're feeling like being generous. Uh, and it's also it's a profit stream. It's not an asset valuation.
Yep, exactly. I just wanted to, touch on that because, Elon's the big name right now. So figured the way he would think about this. So maybe this podcast will get you into the door with Elon and you can really make this happen really quickly.
That would be awesome. Also, speaking of Elon, apparently Vivek has left and is casting around for his next thing. He is also one of the couple thousand human beings on Earth that has the personal wherewithal to make this happen. And if he'd like to be a lot richer than Elon Musk, I could make that happen for him.
There we go. There we go. Awesome. So what are you looking for from my audience and myself right now? Like what can help you?
Well, support is always nice, of course. I'm
Mhm.
there's several different kinds of struggles that are happening. As we mentioned just before the podcast, I am currently suing over the patent. So this technology is public and is presently available under an open source license that would be superseded by a patent should one be granted. Uh, but exploring and investigating the technology and spreading the word about the technology, the possibility to find people that would like to pioneer the future. That's a big ask. It's a big lift, I know, but we're all going to spend our entire lives in the future, so we should probably get there sooner rather than later. And then the other side is that I do have a lawsuit. It's in federal court, the second highest court in the land. It's the appeals court for the federal circuit. So these are the guys, when they say something, it applies to the entire federal government. And, uh, and, you know, hopes and prayers, I guess. You can't really petition federal judges, not legally and safely anyway, but but
Yep.
yeah, that's out there, and that case is currently pending. The arguments have been made, and we'll see like what the admin. I'm not an attorney, so I don't really know what the procedure is after I get done making my argument.
Yep. Well, I hope everything goes well. I hope everything gets passed in your favor because this would be incredible, like really incredible. Now, would this help people like me who, I'm a coach? So would this help me at all as I do everything online? I charge my clients monthly. Is this going to benefit me?
Uh, Probably only indirectly.
Hmm.
So the effect of having more stable and more profitable production is that it suddenly becomes a much better idea to open up businesses producing things. Uh, right now, business school will train you to avoid uh, commodity production because it's
Hmm.
so high competition, and that leads to such low margins.
Yeah.
And that would eventually catch up, but suddenly increasing margins across multiple commodity marketplaces of 30 to 100%, depending on which market it is, uh,
Hmm.
would would start giving you the kinds of returns in those spaces that are associated with the more cowboy aspects and getting lucky. and
Yeah.
and commodity production isn't easy, uh, and it's a lot of hard work, but it's not nearly as risky because the customers are there.
Hmm.
And so that would that grows the economy as a whole, but it grows the economy as a whole through the increased production of high quality product.
Yeah.
And when you increase quality and or quantity at a given quality, prices come down. And so that would be an effect for people who are otherwise largely detached, would see you know grocery stores having more interesting items, lower prices, hardware stores the same, and so on.
Wow. This is going to be really awesome. So thank you for, thinking of this, creating it, making it happen. I know it's going to get through and you'll be, you know, on the rocket, you'll be doing awesome. So how could people connect with you or follow you?
Well, if you want to connect with me, the best way is my email address, noahphealy@yahoo.com. I answer that pretty religiously. You can also connect to me on LinkedIn. So I'm Noah Healy there. Noah Dash Healy, I think, is LinkedIn/Noah Dash Healy. Uh, there's a website, Core Disk, and there's a lot of information that's sort of online. My understanding is that court cases are in fact also pretty much online. I've searched for mine. And
Yeah.
so my case number is 24-2311. And there are two federal cases with that case number, but mine is also called In Ray Healy, my last name. And so it's identifiable if anybody wants to go check out what people were thinking and what people were saying. It's kind of an exciting story. Um, the As far as I can tell, the patent office decided to commit perjury in an attempt to defend itself, and
Oh,
so we'll see how the judges feel about that.
yeah. Ugh. Well, that could be a mess, but it happens. And I gotta ask you, so my slogan is your abilities are infinite. What does that mean to you?
Well, again, I'm a recreational mathematician, and infinity is a big word, but it's also an interesting one because there's an entire branch of the mathematics of infinity, and it actually turned out to be useful in my patent. So
Really?
yeah, there's a guy named Georg Cantor, who mostly did his work in the 1800s. And he got himself thinking about infinity, and he came up with a structured way to think about larger and larger infinities. And what it does to some extent, we're in our modern age, we're all familiar with the idea that numbers can encode information because that's what's going on right now. Our computers are taking digital scans and then sending that information back and forth as a number stream. But what Cantor discovered was that you could actually come up with these higher order infinities that would contain, to some extent, structured information. And so the set of numbers.
This episode of the Infinite Abilities podcast is brought to you by the one and only Infinite Toolbox, where just like all other toolboxes, we will get the job done, guaranteed. Whether you're an entrepreneur looking to save time, boost revenue, or automate your processes, Infinite Toolbox has got you covered. With powerful tools designed to drive leads, expand your reach, and gain your industry secrets, we help you work smarter, not harder. Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Visit us at infinitetoolbox.com. That's infinitetoolbox.com, and discover how infinite your potential really is.
Just like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. That's his baseline. That's the smallest infinity. And just the even numbers, it's the same size. Or just the odd numbers, it's the same size. Or just the prime numbers, it's the same size. Or the integers, where it's those numbers plus the negatives. So 0, 1, -1, 2, -2, like that, same size. Mm-hmm. But you can make these bigger infinities, and you can make these bigger infinities by making kind of lists. And not short lists, infinite lists. So the kind of next biggest infinity is infinite lists of numbers from the first infinity. And then you can make lists of those lists. And that's the next one. And the one after that is lists of those lists of those lists. And so once you start thinking about the fact that, numbers convey information and lists are this really useful organizing principle, then suddenly you can start thinking about infinity as a way to turn structured information into the kinds of things that we can use mathematics on. And for me, when you talk about sort of infinite ability, that's where my mind goes, is the power of using the arithmetic that we teach grade schoolers on objects that we can't even imagine. And there are systems that work like that. And the two of us are conversing through a couple of them because that's what makes computers function.
Yep. Well, thank you for sharing that. You're the first person to take that into numbers and math, and that was really cool. So, what is the message that you would like to leave the audience?
Well, my basic message is that we have these sort of enormously valuable toys that we could turn into these enormously valuable tools and machines. Right now, we haven't really done that. But if we actually do some work and integrate these things into our societies in ways that help us instead of just amusing us, then we're going to be able to build societies that make what we are currently used to look the way that we regard the ancient world, for example, where, we look at, say, 5,000 years ago when people just barely have the wheel and mass slavery and mass invasion warfare and so on, and say, how could people live like that? People could be alive today that could see a world that would regard the way people live now, the way people lived a decade or two ago, or even 4 or 5 ago, if that's where you think the golden age was, as some sort of, how could people have ever lived like that type of scenario. And this, my system isn't the answer to that. I'm not that utopian, but it's a very plausible step. And I think if we all get a lot richer and a lot saner, we can at least think about where else we might want to go with things.
Yep, I agree. All right, Noah, this was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me here.
If you enjoyed this show, please go ahead and share it on your Instagram story and tag me in the Nick Yerhart. Also, go ahead and share it anywhere else that you see fit, because the only way that I can grow this is by you guys sharing it. I don't sell anything on here. I don't have any sponsors, so let's just get it out there by word of mouth and help more people. Alright, everyone, remember, your abilities are infinite.